Hello and good evening and welcome to the Majority Podcast. It's Scotland's number one anti-nationalist show, going out live on Twitter, Facebook and on YouTube. I'm the host, Mark Devlin, and I'm here today with my co-hosts, David Griffiths and Niall Fraser.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
What are we going to be talking about tonight?
Okay, tonight I will be talking about Nicola Sturgeon's mask hypocrisy.
And I'll be asking if the SNP will really give up power after Indy.
And I'll be discussing if Nessie is a raging propaganda merchant.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Right, we'll be back in just a moment. Right, as we always do, we start the programme with a big thank you to our donors. And thanks to everyone who donated to make this podcast possible. If you would like to donate, please go to our website and there's a donate button at the top. And one-time or monthly donations, everything helps in our fight against toxic Scottish nationalism. Also, I'd like to thank our partners at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for helping us put out the show on their Facebook pages.
Indeed.
Right, okay, and if you can't give us a monetary donation, please do consider sharing. Well, don't consider it, just do it. Share, like, comment, get the comments in nice and early, guys. It's imperative that we share this broadcast prior to the May elections coming up so we can make an impact.
Yeah.
Imperative.
Yes, I want to make a special shout out to, because we're doing a meetup in Glasgow next Wednesday, 6th of April. David, you have a bit more details of it?
I do indeed. It's in a central Glasgow location in a venue I know extremely well. I won't give the name of the venue right now, but it will be anyone who is invited and has a chance of making it is, of course, very welcome to attend and will be told exactly where to find us. So looking forward to that greatly.
Niall?
And
who's going to be there?
Yes, so we're going to have a friend of the show and Conservative councillor Ewan Blockley, who's been on the podcast. What a great episode that was. And Labour's Malcolm Cunning talking about local issues in a friendly environment.
Absolutely.
But he's not going to get absolutely lambasted, you know. It will allow him to speak.
Here. Yes.
So if you would like to come to the podcast, please do just drop us a note on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere where you think we might be listening, and we'll send you an invite and hope you can come along. I think it'll be quite an interesting night. A lot of people already said they're going to be coming. And as Niall said, it's a friendly environment where you can meet other people who are anti-nationalists and want to do something. One of the main aims of the Majority is to unite the anti-nationalist community, and we hope that meetups can get a chance to see other people in real life and get to know us as well and find out what we're doing too. So coming up, we have Niall's going to be talking about Nessie, the monster we all know and love. Is she a friend or a foe? Because I think we all know that Nessie is a she. Definitely not a he. Friend or foe is the monster at that. And then I'll be asking the question, will the SNP actually give up power after independence? But first, David's going to be talking about the masked raider herself.
Indeed.
Right, take it away, David.
Okay. So this week, the Scottish public was treated to a display of the First Minister's rank hypocrisy. Now, as we know, Scotland is currently the only region of the UK in which people are still being forced to wear protective masks. And just today, in fact, the SNP government announced a further extension to the compulsory wearing of masks in public places in Scotland. We will now have to wear masks in public until after Easter. So very annoying. However, it is what it is. Now, you could argue, I guess, you could make the argument, although I would disagree with it, that this measure is understandable to a point when you consider the high level of infections in Scotland, the level which is still rising. Now,
Well, you could, I mean, come on. You could also argue that the masks are useless because
indeed,
the level is still rising. I mean, it works both ways, doesn't it?
It does. To an extent, it's conjecture, but the argument, I guess, which is being made is, well, the rate is high, but of course, if we weren't wearing masks, it would be even higher. But that isn't supported when you consider the lower rates of infection in England and Wales and in Northern Ireland, where masks have not been worn for weeks. So it's crazy, really. But I guess that's how they are justifying it. Anyway.
Can I ask, sorry, can I interject to just ask you a question? I mean, how do you feel about people in your local area? What would you say is the mask wearing percentage?
Well, you go first, David. Sorry.
My observation is in where I live down in Ayrshire, most people when they get on buses, because I get on buses these days, courtesy of Nicola's largesse, but a lot of people on buses, you never see anybody getting on without one. You actually don't. The driver doesn't wear one, of course. In bars, you are starting to see people walking in without masks, not being challenged. In shops, you're seeing it. So I would say at the moment, it's something like 50% are still wearing them. Is my observation. What about you, Niall?
I mean, here in Hamilton, I think we're probably maybe along the same lines, maybe a 60-40 split, non-wearers versus wearers at this point. Mostly I see them in supermarkets. That's the majority of the time where I see them, but they are coming off, thank God. I think it's my stance that they're completely useless.
Yeah.
Well, I think entirely. Certainly in Uddingston, close by where we are, is Nicola Sturgeon's home ground.
Yes,
that was quite large, in compliance, and it seems like quite. I would say maybe 80%, 70% of people are still wearing masks, and you just wonder why the people are doing that. Don't they look at what's going on in England and not follow that?
Maybe it's a habit.
It could be. It could be. I mean,
developed a habit.
What I did notice today, I was at a bus station and there are strips emblazoned right across the top of each bus saying it is compulsory to wear face masks when boarding the bus. So they are still pushing it. Companies are certainly still pushing the line. It's not as if they're saying, where possible, wear a face mask, which of course means nothing. But they are still saying you've got to wear a mask. So whether or not that's being strictly enforced, I would question, in all honesty. I'm not seeing any evidence of that at all, whereas I was previously. So, in any event, earlier this week, we all saw on our TVs Nicola Sturgeon appearing alongside her husband, Peter Morrell, who's, of course, these days better known as the Invisible Man, because you never see him. And they were in London, and they were attending the memorial service for the late Prince Philip. Now, what was most notable about this, to me, was, in fact, two things. Firstly, Miss Sturgeon wore the expression of someone who had found £1 and lost a £20 note. She did not look happy at all. And interestingly, it's the very same expression I noticed she wore when she posed for photographs outside Bute House with Boris Johnson. And to me, it screamed, I really don't want to be here and I don't want to be with this man. So please, can I go now? That's how it looked to me. So, go on.
I mean, she obviously looked, quite uncomfortable. I don't quite understand why she got her husband to go, even if he is the head of the SNP, when no other spouses were there. It seemed a little bit strange. Perhaps they had some kind of 2-for-1 deal or something like that. I don't know.
While we're on spouses as well, why did Sturgeon no take Murrell's name?
Very good question. Presumably,
why?
I guess she feels that Nicola Sturgeon is a brand, and she didn't want to.
Don't taint my brand with your name, husband.
Exactly.
When you get married, Niall, you can keep your.
I'll force my name on someone else.
Fantastic. So, of course, that was the first observation. The second observation was that it was utterly galling to see Sturgeon and Murrell both sitting in a public place with neither one wearing a face mask. Now, this kind of got me thinking. If you're the head of government during a pandemic, wouldn't it make sense to at least follow your own advice in relation to the use of protective equipment wherever you are? Wouldn't that be a sensible move, do you think, gentlemen?
I think it's pretty sensible, yeah.
Certainly, at the very least, if you're coming from plague-infested Scotland, and
Yes.
you're going to meet the Queen, the Prime Minister, the head of the opposition, and the whole entire UK establishment, it would be a good idea to wear a mask. You like a typhoid Mary wandering around there, and typhoid Nicola walking around Westminster Cathedral. I mean, this is that you think that would be, if she cared so much about not spreading the virus to folks. She said, I mean, she did that whole thing during when the pandemic was at its height, and that was, we're going to close the border to stop plague carriers from England coming into Scotland, and those guys were standing at the border with the get out of Scotland, or stay away, whatever it was, or FU England, or all this type of thing.
That happened. You're right.
I mean, so doesn't she have even at just a basic level, not even, political
why is the mask not being coordinated across the whole UK as well? It's such a bad situation that we've got all these different, home nation approaches to COVID. I just think it's really terrible.
It should have been a one nation approach, exactly.
It allows her to grandstand with a mask for an extra month or so. I'm protecting my people more than you, Boris.
Exactly.
It's just nonsense.
We talked about that before. It's a win-win for her, because basically if it goes up, even if it goes up, she says, well, I prevented it going up more. And if it goes down, she says, well, I of course it worked.
Look, I brought the rates down, exactly. But, I mean, to my mind, if you were in Sturgeon's position, for a start, you'd want to set an example to the people on whose behalf you've imposed these increasingly unpopular measures. And also, if you're in London, where by her own logic, face masks are not being used, therefore it must be more of a threat to you to pick up the virus, wouldn't it make sense to protect yourself when you're going to go back to Scotland? But it would appear these considerations were all lost in Sturgeon, because first chance she got after preaching to us all that we must keep wearing face masks, as soon as she gets out of Scotland, off comes the face mask. And I just thought, well, how's that for a classic way of encouraging your people by saying, don't do as I do as I say.
Well,
exactly.
We've had previous in that. Here's an example, of course. My stupid mistake. So I've got to put this the other way. My stupid mistake. That's when she was, chatting away to these two elderly people who look scared for their lives. The plague. So it's it's not the first time that she's done this, and she's had this hypocritical attitude to masks, and I think people are quite fairly right to say, well, if you go down there and you're not even doing it even for political reasons or for show, then why should we do it at all? That's
Indeed.
And effectively, what's the difference in a few hours? I mean, she took the train down and got the train back, and it's only a few hours. So, I mean, for me, it makes zero difference wearing a mask in England and wearing one in Scotland, or vice versa. It makes zero 100%. Difference whatsoever. It's just a political tool in her arsenal that she's using. That's all it is.
That's more like it,
I think it obviously showed her lack of commitment to the premise of wearing masks. So, I mean, the fact that as soon as she got the opportunity to whip it off, she did exactly that. And that's what I said on Twitter today. I would encourage everybody to stop wearing them. And if anyone asks you why, just say, well, the First Minister doesn't wear one. Why should I? What difference does it make what country you're in? It's just ludicrous. So, now, hypocrisy at its best, and at its worst, I should say. But frankly, not surprising.
It was part of a devious plan for her to infect all those people. Get them out the
Who knows? Yes. Breathing.
Meanwhile, there's still pupils in schools forced to wear masks.
That's true.
This... I really do feel for the pupils in this situation. They're the ones that are being forced to do these things while watching their leader go and thwart them. Shocking.
Crazy. It's just poor. It's like so much of the SNP. It's just, you look at it and think, how are you so lacking in self-awareness? Do you not know how bad this looks and what image you're projecting? Very poor indeed.
I think we can ask our viewers, are you wearing masks or not? Are you wearing masks now? Are you following Nicola Sturgeon's advice? I'm I know that I'm not. I used to be. Last holdout was a charity shop, and so because there were lots of older people there, but not anymore. It's not if the rest it's good enough for the rest of the UK. It's good enough for me. But
Quite right.
please do let us know what you think about it in the comments.
Yes.
Excuse me. Coming up, it's going to be we always have Zoomer of the week, but first is Nessie, an English plot. Niall investigates the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh,
So another week rolls past in Scottish politics, driving us all closer to insanity with stupendous levels of ridiculousness. And this week isn't any different. Nessie has made the headlines. No, she hasn't been cited. She's a few weeks ago on this podcast, we were mentioned that the SNP's predilection for infiltrating schools and education with their nationalist agenda. And it would appear that mythical creatures, even Nessie isn't off limits. So, Mark, if you'd be so kind as to bring the article up. So, what's going on here? Is this just not the most ridiculous story you've ever read? And oh, right. I know. So,
your mind boggled there.
I'm having a brain freeze at this. There's so much to unpack here, right? So the new social studies lessons plan will see pupils north of the border. They're taught how middle classes also used the Loch Ness story in a bid to curb Scottish independence. I mean, you ever heard something so farcical in your life? I mean, you heard that correctly. I mean, how far will the SNP and Nationalists stoop? Come on. There is a few winners in this article, though. So there's a guy called Chris McGovern. So if you go down to his quote, Mark, it's absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, down the bottom here. Yes.
Yeah. Apologies for looking at the side. I've got a wee bit of technical difficulties. So if you go down to his quote, right, it says, there is no question about it presenting an anti-British bias. It seeks to brainwash pupils into believing that Scotland is a victim of a wicked conspiracy to subvert and infantilise its identity. The nationalist cause must be desperate. Oh,
absolutely.
Oh, desperate. I can't really read that, Mark. Can you read the rest?
Desperate trouble if it has to resort to such propaganda tactics with young people.
Isn't the point of what they were saying that Scotland is being portrayed as an undeveloped place where prehistoric monsters roam because Scotland is so backward? I mean, what kind of spin is that? Seriously, where do you get that from?
It's how do we link Nessie to the fight for independence? How do we do that? It's like the 7 degrees of separation. You'll find a way. They'll find a way to combine the two. It's just so ridiculous. I mean,
well, it does make you wonder, though, doesn't it? It's like what I actually haven't paid too much attention to it. I just thought it was so ridiculous that but it seems there's no level they'll stoop to, or no depth.
No depth to which they will not stoop happily and eagerly. Yes, exactly.
And it's like the Loch Ness Monster. You're like, wait a minute, wasn't that invented by local people so that you could get people to come up to what's generally a pretty boring loch?
That's the cynical view.
Get an F in the chat, or let us know if you've actually seen the film. Is it just Nessie? It's called. Have you seen that film, gents?
No, I haven't. I would.
Right. So there's a film. I think I watched it when I was a kid. It was. I did not think it was anti-Scottish bias at all when I was watching it. I mean, it doesn't even enter your brain. It only enters the brain of warped-minded nationalists. Only.
I'll tell you what it reminded me of, guys. It reminded me of a story which was in the media around 10 years ago, which said that the hokey cokey has sinister anti-Irish origins because it's mocking the practice of some religious ceremony which was practiced by Irish people when they came to Scotland to live, and the hokey cokey should be banned because it harks back to a time when Irish people were discriminated against. And I thought, I could have sworn that the hokey cokey was a method to teach young children movement in song. I thought that's what it was. Yeah, I don't think it was anything to do with Irish people. But again, these people who are looking to manufacture grievance will find a way to do it every single time.
Yep.
So we've got the Hokey Cokey and Nessie must be banned now because they're anti-Scottish and anti-Irish. Well, okay.
I have to say,
I don't know
I
what's
feel
going to be
like
next.
this picture that they've got here,
Oh, yeah.
they managed to get
What's
of
this?
Nessie.
This big hulking behemoth. Yep, there it is. He's been cited. I mean,
What is that?
come on.
Actually,
Yeah,
I mean,
this would be
Scots
great,
school
I thought.
kids to be taught the Loch Ness Monster is a symbol of England's domination of Scotland. I mean, have you ever read a headline so ridiculous in your life? This is Scotland in 2022, guys. Come on.
Indeed.
Symbol of the
Michael
oppression
Mashison's Hokey
of
Cokey man.
Scots.
There you go.
For somehow. Well, I think, Nessie just has to have some kind of, what does it say? Like, I'm oppressed.
When he
It's
surfaced,
big with belief, this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yes, have to. I mean, that's the thing, but it is actually kind of, in a way, it is kind of sinister because you could laugh at this and you say, all right, this is a bit of a laugh and all that, but there are people actively out there trying to make this happen, and they're trying to indoctrinate young people with these ideas, and they're trying to push these grievances, and they'll use whatever they can. They can use whatever cultural reference they have. If it's Nessie, it's fine. And I'll talk a little bit later about David Livingston. It's going to be the statue there. They're going to use whatever they can grab onto because it will generate headlines and it will generate money for them and power. And we have to say, no, we do this. I was talking to Mary about this the other day. Sometimes we think it's a laugh, but imagine we weren't here to criticise that, or people like us weren't here to criticise it. They would be running all over us with this kind of nonsense. And it would just never stop. We have to stand up and we have to say, no, this isn't a symbol of domination. It's a folk myth that was made up by people, people. What's nothing to do with English? How could it even be possible?
It's not. I mean, the article goes on to say that there's a 17-page lesson plan that has tasked teachers teaching 11 to 14-year-olds how the monster's portrayal in the film promotes negative stereotypes of Scottish people. What?
Right. Yeah.
Am I reading
very
this?
good.
Well, first they come for Nessie, next they're coming for the haggis. So,
of course.
course.
You've given them another idea, Mark. You should never do that.
No.
You keep giving them good ideas.
I mean,
Haggis is
talking about rare Scottish creatures. We did actually see a rare sighting of Peter Murrow the other day at Westminster Abbey, and I think it hasn't been seen in public for over a year. And of course, the question there is, where is the money that was ring fenced, Peter? We'd like to know. And for all the people who we don't particularly care about it, but I think the SNP and independent supporters who put that money in, expecting it to be used for an independence fund, would like to know where that is. That is a kind of Scottish fairy story, not fairy story. Fairy
Mark,
story.
honestly.
Yes.
Scottish fairy story. A strange man disappears one day, and no one knows where the £600,000 went. Yet they'd rather let us have us distracted by the monster. But there are monsters among us.
Indeed. Listen, some very, very interesting comments coming in here. Kate McTaggart has said that her 9-year-old grandson said to her that Nicola Sturgeon is good, and Kate says that the girl's grandson, his parents never discuss politics. So where is this coming from? Well, I can tell you, when I was at school in the 1960s, because I'm old, when I was in primary school, our teacher said to us one day, "Who can tell me what SNP stands for?" And of course, the correct answer is none of us, because we're 7. So how about you teach us and stop trying to indoctrinate us? But that's what people do. That's what teachers can do. So guarantee you, Kate, that's coming straight from your grandson's teacher. It's an utter disgrace.
Yeah. It's
really is shocking. We talked about this a few weeks ago in the podcast with the nationalists putting money into projects at St Andrews University, for example. Indeed. And if you want that funding, you're not going to be going up and saying,
absolutely.
What was it for Future Scotland? That's what it was. But you're not going to go up and say, a hard border is my project's about how a hard border destroys trade, and they're not going to give you any money for that. So what happens is a creeping self-censorship amongst people, and we hope that we started our majority youth outreach fund to combat that, and that's going very well. And we're starting to make do some spend money and help people to stand up against the Scottish nationalist establishment. But I mean, young people need all the help they can get because they've got peer pressure, of course, and they've got this kind of thing going on in the schools where you get these ridiculous stories about the Loch Ness monster and haggis and whatever is going to come up next. And they're young minds, and they're not as cynical perhaps as we are. And so,
that's very true. Got to mention a couple of these comments, guys. Does Morell have a job within the SNP? Rita, Morell is the chief executive officer.
Exactly.
He is the most senior employee, the most senior figure within the SNP. Isn't it a happy coincidence that he met a woman who became his wife, who is also the leader of the same party which he runs? Isn't that wonderful? What a lovely story.
Oh, maybe it was the other way around, though.
It could be, yeah, indeed. Sean Grant has asked us a couple of times. Do we think the SNP will still be in charge 5, 10 or 15 years in the future? Or do we think they'll eventually fall apart and people get fed up and go back to Labour? Our fervent hope is that people will get fed up and will go back to Labour or the Conservatives. My personal opinion is it's very unlikely that the Conservative Party will ever topple the SNP and become the party of government in Scotland in their own right. I think that's quite a stretch, but I think it's very conceivable that Labour might. So the only question we'll have, and this is a question we'll pose to the Labour councillor when we meet him on Tuesday and Wednesday, is how do you see that happening? What is the path to Labour becoming once again the dominant force in Scottish politics? Because I'd really love to know. Because
it's friendly.
It's going to be friendly, all right. But I'd like to know what he thinks. So yes, that's.
I think we're actually going to be mainly talking about local issues, but we will.
Indeed. Yes, we're talking to Glasgow councillors about Glasgow issues. That's quite right.
We're talking about, to answer a little bit more on that question, I've written a bit about it, the strategy of what we call the Golden Bridge strategy, is that Labour needs to create a Golden Bridge for SNP, disillusioned SNP voters to come back to their party. And that means that they have to do things that we might not, as some of our supporters in the majority might not like, and that means that they have to criticise the Tories to do that. A lot of our followers want the Labour and Tories to
the sort of unification
work together, and they can work together in some subtle ways. Like, for example, today Anna Sarwar and Douglas Ross were pummeling Nicola Sturgeon in Parliament, but they weren't working together to do that. They were working for each other against Nicola Sturgeon. And I think what we're looking for is to continue with that type of thing, where people can say, I'm a socialist, for example, and I'm going to vote for the party that gives the best local services, can support the NHS and so on.
Right.
And that, for me, for that person, would be Labour. So we want to see, in Scotland, we want to see a strong Labour, we want to see a strong Tory party as well. We're a cross-party organisation. So we support them both being strong, which can be a little bit difficult for some people to see sometimes, because you might say, well, why are you supporting the Tories here? Or why are you supporting Labour here? But we're supporting the strongest candidates we can.
Absolutely right.
And that's why we're doing in the meetup as well, where we're saying, okay, let's get the pro-UK candidates in, let them have a chat with us, and let's see what they're coming up with as in local issues, and maybe one or two questions about what's going on there. So we're going to talk a lot more about strategy. Hopefully, maybe we really have to pencil in for next week. We keep saying we're going to do it. I think that's very good to know.
Any more good comments coming in? I've not looked.
Maybe a test drive of Indy is needed. David Robertson, I would suggest that what we're seeing right now is a test drive of what Indy would be: utter failure, corruption, overspend, non-delivery, lies. No, I think to look at what's happening now and say, I know, let's try independence. That will magically make it all better. No, it absolutely won't.
Yes.
So I would disagree entirely with that as a suggestion.
I'm actually going to come on to a little bit about that in a second. I'm talking about, will the SNP give up power after
independence?
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, as you know, we spend a lot of time fighting for you on Twitter against raging cybernats. And it's a bit like we described this before as a tsunami of delusion. So just of course, the major delusion is that they think they are going to get a second referendum, and there's no evidence that that's actually going to happen. But we'll put that to the side for the moment, and instead we'll talk about this particular question that we often see, that they say is that after Indy, well, you can vote for whoever you like.
Yeah.
So the obvious question then is, all right, okay, so you want the Tories to run Scotland, because if unless they want a one-party state, then
Yes.
they expect that there'll be two sides to the debate, and sometimes one side is going to win. The other side, the side you don't like, is going to win. So basically, I've written an article about this before, and the idea is, well, you're voting for independence, so you're really voting for for Tories to run Scotland.
That's right.
And then at that point, the kind of brains start to explode.
Yes.
No, do you have something to say about that?
I mean, I just think that they're never, ever going to give up power if they, in this hypothetical Indy 2 win, right?
Yes.
They're never ever. I mean, the circles will get tighter. Media scrutiny will go away. All these scandals will just mount up. We'll never get anywhere with them. There'll never be any accountability. It's just going to go like the new times 10. This is your taste of what an independent Scotland will look like. 250 million squandered on ferries that are not even float. They don't even float. They were launched with painted windies at a cost. So this is just the beginning. This is your taster of independence or separation, as I like to call it. It's no independence. They're
breaking up the UK.
Yes, it's a breaking up a country at a time with great global implications to that.
Yep.
Yeah, so
particularly with what's going on in Ukraine. Yes, exactly. Now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not as if there isn't actually any evidence of what's going to happen. Now, a few years ago, a poll asked a question: if the SNP issue a legally binding commitment that in the event of a yes vote for Scottish independence, they will permanently disband the SNP and step down from government as soon as independence negotiations are concluded. In that event, how do you think you would vote in a referendum? And this poll result's quite interesting because when basically the SNP said, well, we like the idea of independence, but we don't like the idea of the SNP not being part of it. So, for example, when the actual question was, should Scotland be an independent country, 82% of SNP voters said yes, right, as you would expect. Although I don't know about the other, 9% what they're up to.
Yeah.
Why do you follow the SNP if you're not for independence? Certainly considering
there are people who vote SNP that do not want independence. This is the weird. there is a weird portion of society that actually do that.
Yes.
And obviously it's around 18%.
Yeah, and those are the people who I believe vote SNP because they feel it is the only available expression of their Scottish identity. I don't think that they recognise the Conservative Party as representative of their views, and I think they no longer consider the Labour Party as being representative of their views. The Lib Dems, well, they're not really factors in this, I'm afraid, and so the only way out they see is to vote SNP. I remember, I think I said this, but I may have said this before in the show. I remember during the pandemic sitting in a beer garden once at the time that Sturgeon was giving all of her updates every day, and it was in Ardrossan, and one lady patron opined that the thing about Nicola is at least you can understand her. When you listen to Boris, it's all gobbledygook, and I think it's no more meaningful or deep than that. They hear a Scottish voice and think, oh, yeah, I think I'll vote for her. Who's this guy? English? No, I'm not going to vote for him. And I think that's it. So crazy, but who knows why people...
there's definitely a lot of that going on. So we've got that. I mean, you'd expect that SNP supporters would vote for vote for independence, but when they're asked if their vote would guarantee the end of the SNP, the enthusiasm drops off. And this poll said that only 59% would say yes in that case.
That's quite a drop. Wow.
Yes, it's gigantic.
And so what this means, I think, is that for many people in the SNP, power is more important than independence. And this is what we see in the party at the moment. We have these careerists and people like Nicola Sturgeon who want to hold on to power, but are not really that interested in doing a referendum, taking the risk of a referendum, or going for independence, because it's cushy life. 200 with her husband, it's £250,000 a year in household income for a start.
Less anything that goes missing.
Yeah.
So we have this issue where you've got people in the party who are, you can see that the party splitting now. Whether it's an overt split, like some people going to Alba, for example, or it's an internal split where people are like, well, why aren't you pushing for independence? And the answer is, well, we've got power as it is now. Why upset the apple cart, as it were?
Yes.
But the thing is, as this party splits, neither side can really get the support it needs to get over the top. And the more it splits, the more chance of that happening. We're seeing that more and more. I mean, basically, when Sturgeon goes, she's kind of holding it together, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Once she goes, you'll be left with basically just with the nutters, I think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one up and coming figure in the SNP. I'm not going to name this person because I don't want to inflate their ego, but there's somebody who isn't really quoted very much, but I'm convinced she's been groomed for the top job. And I'll say it to you privately, guys. I don't want to say it here because I really don't want to feed her publicity machine. Indeed. So I would be certain that I think she's been groomed for the top job because she appears to have the very same characteristics that Sturgeon has. So we'll see. Let's just see.
I think I know who you're talking. I mean, I don't think we're in any real danger. I think they're all incompetent in the SNP. Yes. Every single one of them. The backroom staff, the lot of them. So I don't think they're in any danger whatsoever of any new leaders. And I think you touched on when Sturgeon goes, Mark. I think when Sturgeon goes, the party will collapse. That's why they're desperate to hold on to her now. Desperate.
You presume that's why. Sorry, Mark. I was going to say you presume that's why they're putting out Kate Forbes as a type of human shield right now, because Kate Forbes is saying, "Guys, why are you asking me? I wasn't even here 7 years ago when these decisions were made about the ferries." She's got a point. So, but the fact is, she keeps saying, she just trots out these lines. We've learned lessons. Well, okay, you're the finance secretary. What lessons have you learned? Well, we've learned lessons. What are they then? What are you going to do differently? Well, what we learned was to give the next ferry gig to a Turkish company. But meanwhile, we're protecting jobs in the Clyde and shipbuilding. Sorry, what's the lesson here exactly? So it's just awful. But she's got nothing to say in the matter of any substance.
Maybe
she's the one in front of the cameras.
The lesson they're learning, and every scandal they get away with, is how much can they get away with? That's the lesson that they learn. That's the lesson. That's what they take from this. We can get away with losing 250 million. No bother.
Yep.
No responsibility.
You would be able to get away with in an independent Scotland. As it drags to the ground.
Away with everything.
It wasn't me. That was the thing. Big Boy did it and ran away. I mean, that's their whole ethos. Really, it's nothing to do with them ever. It's always someone else's fault.
Absolutely right.
I mean, that's what nationalism is by definition. It's a deflection, right? Nationalism is deflecting your own fault to give the blame to someone else. So
it's either people from another country, or people from another race, or people from another religion. That's what categorizes nationalism. It always has done. And Scottish, that's why they give you all this nonsense about our nationalism is civic, fluffy, national, utter rubbish. Nationalism is nationalism, and it is never the answer. So that's why we have to keep calling out. And that, gentlemen, is exactly why we are continually termed British nationalists, because that's just classic Alinsky projection. Yes. They will accuse you of being what they are in order to smear you.
Well, I mean, the British nationalist thing, I've got an article half written about that, and basically,
very good.
It's it's a form of othering, right?
Yep.
It's not enough that we are, we can't be Scottish anti-Scottish nationalists.
Quite, because we are.
We can't. That's what we are. In fact, so they brand us as British nationalists.
Yes, that's a very interesting point, Mark.
So there's a kind of othering when they call us that. And when they're saying we're actually, it's not enough to say, they're trying to say they're more Scottish than us in doing it. And well, we're just as Scottish as you, mate. We
if not more.
No, it's hard if we're more or not. It's just there's no competition of who's the most Scottish, really.
Exactly.
It's just like we're as Scottish as they are. If you wear a kilt or have a saltire doesn't make you more Scottish
I know.
than me.
Absolutely.
You know,
It's
You can
also
change
the same.
your name by deed poll to William Wallace. It's not going to make you more,
Not gonna make you more
Scottish.
Exactly. And of course, what's the
no
classic
idea.
line they always use, nationalists? They always say, why are you talking Scotland down? Why don't you believe in Scotland? Why? Because we don't believe in the breakup of the UK. That makes us less Scottish. Sorry,
Actually, I had
guys.
one of those I had one of those yesterday, and I thought, no, this is actually just someone trolling me. I just thought I'd leave it alone.
Yeah.
Well,
There's no
instead
point
of
having that
it's
argument.
like,
Exactly.
I'm not even getting into that. It's like
Yep.
I'm just as Scottish as you. I have an opinion just as much as you. It's
Yep.
like that's the thing. I would just go back a little bit to the Sturgeon thing. I was thinking about it there, and when she leaves, it's not just that she leaves and the next person comes on. The next person will know at that point that Sturgeon's strategy failed, right? So
Yep.
whatever her strategy was failed. So they're going to be left with basically wreckage, a bunch of wreckage in there, and a party split. I don't think they can. I think I agree with Niall. I don't think it's possible for them to continue from there.
I think
And then at
you
that
would-
point, I think we talk about, as we say, the Golden Bridge back to
Where-
Labour. It may take many years to do that, but first of all, they have to go through all the stages of grief.
Aye.
Denial, bargaining.
Denial, exactly. DABDA, yes, exactly. Denial, anger,
Exactly.
anger,
Yes.
bargaining, depression, acceptance. Yes, exactly, right.
So we've still got to get through and at the moment there's a lot of bargaining going on, but I think we're next into the anger and depression, and wonder if they'll ever get to the acceptance level. Who knows?
No, I mean,
No,
although I did see an interesting article, Neil Mackay.
Yeah.
Neil Mackay out attacking the SNP.
Well, he always is, though. That's the
so
thing.
It's only because
Every
they-
article he says, "I'm not a nationalist."
But yeah, I back independence. Yeah, right. Okay, mate. Fine.
Anyway, moving on. Just okay. Final thing. Sorry. If you vote for anyone, nationalist or not, they'll take that exactly as what it is: a vote for approval. And why would anyone give up the vote of the approval of their voters? Coming up, it's best part of the week. It is Zoomer of the week.
Absolutely.
And I believe, David, you're first.
I think I'm up first again this week. Okay, so my Zoomer of the week for this week is SNP MP and would-be counterfeiter David Linden, who this week stood down from the SNP's Westminster front bench to focus on his constituency work. Interestingly, Linden has been replaced as SNP work and pensions spokesperson by none other than Kirsty Blackman, who had herself previously stepped down from the front bench, citing, I believe, health issues. What's the matter, guys? Is there no one else in the party who's capable of stepping up? Anyway, so to get back to Linden, he, let's not forget, is the man who assured both Andrew Neil and the watching public that Scotland would continue not only to use the pound sterling, but Scotland would additionally continue to print the pound sterling after independence. Now, I don't know if we've got the video, probably not, but
I've not got the video because it goes on for ages, but
it does go on. Yeah, this is the.
You can find it on Facebook. Oh, sorry, David. Sorry, David.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So if you just Google Andrew Neil, David Linden, you will not believe what you're hearing, because what the chap says is that Scotland can print the pound after it becomes effectively a foreign country. So presumably these banknotes would have to be turned out from a counterfeit printing press in Linden's garage, because that, I can assure you, is the only way anyone in Scotland will be able to print the currency of what would by that stage be a foreign country, i.e. the United Kingdom, should Scotland ever choose to break away and become independent. But almost unbelievably, Linden, who's an MP and a front bench MP at the time, said, "Oh no, Andrew, Scotland prints pound sterling now, as does England. So yeah, after independence, we'd continue to print the pound, Andrew." That's what he actually said. David, can I just let you know?
Exactly. His eyes,
absolutely. You see, what is this guy for real? Can I just point out, for those of you who maybe aren't aware of this, Scotland prints the pound sterling now because Scotland is in the UK now. Those Scottish banknotes are UK banknotes, which happen to be printed in Scotland with nice little pictures on them. That's it. They are not Scottish notes as such. They're just made in Scotland. That's it. Mm-hmm. But David Linden said, "Oh no, we'll continue to do that." No, you bloody won't. Not a chance. Anybody putting forth that as a proposition seriously needs a I don't know what, it's therapy or something, because it's just ludicrous. So this entitlement to print the pound sterling would end literally on day one of independence. Not that it's ever going to happen, hopefully. But anyway, this is my opportunity to roll out this idiotic misunderstanding, probably a deliberate misunderstanding of the situation. And so my vote for this my nomination goes to David Linden as Zoomer of the Week.
Linden.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shocker. I mean, it's this idea that, it's like the Emma Harper. Is that her name? Emma Harper?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
We can just, print
It's
the notes,
plastic.
Plastic translates everywhere, Mark.
Exactly.
because it's Scottish. Because it's Scottish. Of course, it's worth more. It's like,
Of course, you're right. You can trade your Scottish notes for more than English notes. I mean, it's incredible.
That means our pound can be really strong.
Go down to England and across the border and say, here, I've got some Scottish notes. I'm going to sell you them. These ones here you can have for £2. I think you know what kind of reaction you would get.
Exactly.
I think something Linden, he's just a candidate for Zoomer of forever. That guy,
Quite
Anyway,
right. Quite right.
moving on. Right, it's me. I'm up this one here. Of course, we could go for Janie Godley, whose ongoing pity party is sickening to actual victims of online abuse, like myself. She's quite, on the TV and everywhere, giving apologies to. I think we lost Niall there. We'll hopefully come back in a second.
Yeah.
Lost your photo, yeah.
Oh no!
I'm sure you'll come back in a minute.
I'll get that.
We'll continue without you for now and hope you'll come back. Anyway, pity party continuing, not dealing with the real victims. I mean, you could talk about that, but the problem with these people is they like the attention, so we won't go there. Probably shouldn't even mention it anyway. So instead, we're going to talk about Glasgow statue botherers. Now, I have no real objection to people putting down statues. There was a statue. For example, if there's a statue of Alexander, I'd be quite happy to go down there and pull that down.
Bother it, yes.
Nationalism, but in fact, there was a statue of Alex, not a statue so much. Remember that thing at the university when
the stone, the stone.
The stones will melt under the. Never
the rocks will melt in the sun.
I remember that
before we charge tuition fees. That's right.
That's the one. No, it's in a cupboard somewhere because
it's melted.
Didn't like it. So but thankfully that happened because otherwise we'd been down there with some sledgehammers, before too long.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, statues are, you can assess statues. It's not like there's one side to these things. I was down in Bristol not that long ago, and I saw the famous statue that had been put in the river of Edward Colston, the slaver. Yes, fair enough.
Bristol,
guy, he might have done a lot of good for the city, but at the same time did a lot of bad stuff. So we've got this review going on in Glasgow. Well, I should say in Bristol as well. They've actually put the statue in a museum. It's quite something to see. But it's part of their culture, I suppose, down there now. But this thing is going on in Glasgow now, and they have a review of the statues in the city. And now, of course, we all know that there were slave links in Glasgow and so on. And that's something that, like every public thing should be assessed at some point. But as usual, they've gone too far this time.
Yep.
And what we've seen is they've actually started attacking this particular statue of David Livingston and saying it may be removed because, and get this is the reason, because when he was 10 years old, he worked in a mill that likely used West Indian cotton. Now, that's that headline there. Despite him being an abolitionist credited with ending the slave trade.
Despite, I'm sure he was, he got up and worked in that cotton mill at 10 years old of his own volition,
he
what a
was walking down the road one day and he thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and
start a career as a.
I won't bother working on this. I won't bother playing in the seesaw today. I must go and see if I can get a job in a cotton mill. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, we buy that.
I mean, there's loads of places you think. I mean, what's this again? It's another thing. It was like the Nessie thing, isn't it? It's like they're trying to virtue signal something and say, and try to make something get headlines. This has generated headlines all over the world. Same with the Nessie story. And this is when people see that they go, these people go, what target will I pick next? and that can get me headlines and get me grant money and get me in with the Glasgow, into the local governments or whatever it's slave commission and get paid for a year doing this type of stuff.
Yeah,
I think
it's
there's a certain
crazy.
part of it that's fair enough, and there's a certain part. This is a guy here. I've got his name here. His name is Dr. Stephen Mullen. So, I just think it's really something. I don't know. Here's an article from the Times. Dr. Livingston cancelled. I presume. What was the actual statement?
for
Try to get rid of.
goodness sake.
To be fair, it is a good headline. So, on you go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right, so I mean, I find it bizarre that there's people in Glasgow sitting about in offices, ticking. Oh, this statue can stay up. This statue can stay up. Oh, this one. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, what can we do with this? Oh, David Livingston. Oh, they're getting paid today in the Hun, basically.
Yeah.
Again, to me, it's a colossal waste of money. We should be putting more statues up, not taking them down. I just disagree with it entirely.
Did you see that Nicola Sturgeon said that she didn't want didn't want a statue made of her? She said that the other day. Can you imagine?
That's code for saying I want a statue made for me.
Can you imagine?
Nobody comes out and says, make a statue of me, please.
People saying, well, Nicola Sturgeon, she was a vile nationalist. We'll pull that one down. So perhaps we can see that before the statue is actually put up. Don't put the statue up. All right? That's the thing. Actually assess these things properly. I have to say that I just want to show this wee picture. I love this statue actually of David Livingston, and it's outside the museum in Blantyre. I don't know if you can see that. It's him being attacked by a lion. I don't know if you've been there. That's
beautiful.
It's really great. He got quite a bad injury there when he was, exploring and doing whatever it is he was doing.
And that certainly was not at Edinburgh Zoo, I can tell you.
He got injured in a lion attack. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
It was quite something. It's quite interesting. You read the whole story. It's got a fascinating story. He's a very Christian guy, I think, and he went out and he realised that a lot of harm was being done by slavery and put his mind to stopping it. Anyway, Dr. Stephen Mullen, you are my Zoomer of the week. Next up will be Niall.
Right, another week, another Nicola Sturgeon Zoomer. So she's my fourth time on the trot. I'm picking her, and I done it. I don't purposely pick her every week. Honestly, I don't. She proclaims the buck stops with her. Then it's collective responsibility. Then it's the buck stops with her. Someone, if not multiple people, must resign over this gigantic sum of our money, folks. Our money is getting absolutely thrown away on ferries that don't float, on PR exercises for Nicola Sturgeon herself. So they've had to prep this ferry for her to go along and pretend to launch it. They launched a ship that wasn't seaworthy. That's this government. They've launched a ship with painted on windies for a PR exercise at our cost. Yes. At the cost of us. So someone, if not everyone involved in this deal, must resign. The entire cabinet has to go. This is unbelievable. As our viewers will most likely know, that this is just one of the SNP scandals involving public funds. Just the one. And there's more and more coming down the track. And what we're going to see the same excuses rolled out again. The buck stops with me, she'll claim. And none will happen. And collective responsibility, none will happen.
No, it's collective responsibility.
Exactly.
That's a good one, Mark. Collective responsibility, I like it.
Collective ducking.
They can get away with murder.
Yep.
Well, it wouldn't surprise us if that's next. And that's actually that's what happens in. I'm joking.
Who's done it?
But that's what happens in nationalist regimes and has happened in the past.
Indeed.
People, they get away with it, and they get away with it, and they get away with more. And perhaps people might say, well, the scandal about the people in care homes being moved out of care homes, hospitals into care homes.
Yeah, that's resulting in death. Resulting in mass death.
Many deaths, exactly.
So And to be fair, it's not even right that we're focusing on the ferry scandal when that exists, when there's people's lives have been lost through
absolutely
the gross incompetence.
Yeah, I mean, those lives are lost over a decision which was monumentally stupid and criminally irresponsible, and it should be treated as such, as a crime, literally.
Remember,
I was going to say, you don't move people whom you know to have this, at the time, potentially deadly virus into a care home to infect old people there who are the least capable of fighting off this deadly virus.
That's what I was about to say.
What my dad would have called a dastardly deed, an absolutely appalling deed. Dreadful. Yeah. It's like an act of euthanasia. It's just scandalous.
Yes, anyway, it's a big thing. So we've run
we're close here.
Who chose last time?
I chose last time.
To be fair, I think you've made a good case, Mr. Devlin. I think you've made a good case. I mean, attacking David Livingston has just gone too far.
Here. I would do that also, yes.
Let's say it's a combined thing. It's David Livingston and Nessie. You know, if David Livingston was riding on Nessie and he would give us a wee cheer right now and he'd say, "Thanks, the Majority Podcast. This is the kind of support we need." So, all right, we're going to close up. Thank you for
couple of shouts out. Stuart, thanks again for joining in today. Scooters at the end today is the absolute opposite of what the SNP is foisting in Scotland. You're quite right. Somebody made the point that there's nothing wrong with nationalism when you're proud of your country. I would disagree. Being proud of your country is patriotism. Nationalism is something entirely different. We're all patriots. I'm unbelievably proud of being Scottish, but I'm certainly not nationalist, and I never will be. Never. So that's the distinction I would make there. The last thing I'd like to say is it was great to meet a donor in the flesh this week. I didn't know he was a donor. He didn't know I was on the show, so that was really nice. So hello, Craig, if you're looking in.
Of course, that's a good opportunity for us to say you can donate to the podcast. Go to the Majority Scot website and hit the donate button. We appreciate every and all donations. I'm going to thank you for Mary, who has been doing all the chat tonight. There she is.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mary. Well, they've kept me busy tonight. We've had so many comments coming in, and I hope we'll have even more next week. Hope you all enjoyed the show.
Thank you. So again, thank you to our donors. Thanks to our distribution partners, UK Union Voice and United Against Separation. And I'm going to leave you with the thought of the week, the words of Wordsworth, who describe someone like David Livingston. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our life sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sand of time. Who will see your footprints? Thanks, Niall. Thank you, David. Thanks,
pleasure, guys, as always.
Bye.
And we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks to everyone for looking in. See you next week.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Have a great one. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for all the comments, and it's been wonderful. All the best.
Take care. Thank you.